the books of Kings cover the history of the two kingdoms from the accession of Solomon in 978 to the fall of Jerusalem in 586, and therefore much meandering of human history according to the fidelity of often the top man, the king, to the will of God, or not. Solomon, whose name means the peaceful one, was able, because of that peace, to build the temple, which had been the desire of his father David. But there was not enough peace under the reign of David for that to happen. Peace is the ambit which allows much to happen. War destroys even culture. But what was interesting was that the way that wisdom also had its effect on the material. A little aside, in the 1700s in England and Wales, there was much preaching going on. The great preachers of Methodism were around, and historians have seen that that obverted in part a violent revolution similar to the one that happened in France at the same period. And it also had an effect on society insofar as the so-called Protestant work ethos over time raised the working class of the Industrial Revolution to the present middle class status. And that was done without violence, but just by prayer at home and regular observance of the Sunday over the weekend, in which God therefore was able to influence directly the lives of people through the soul, not by being ordered from on high by Parliament. It works when it's spontaneous. I just close that parenthesis because it does show that the spiritual has also an effect on the material. So this was happening here already. And the prayer that was going to be crucial was precisely the one that asked for wisdom, not for victory over enemies or for much wealth. As it happens, wealth came through having wisdom and not having leakage of energy and wealth in war. What was actually the prayer that was made by Solomon? It was, in Hebrew, a prayer for a lev shomeach, a heart that listens. Shomeach is the present participle of shemach, and it just means a hearing, a listening heart. And so, with this listening heart, he will be able then to judge God's people. That's the prayer that's made. And also to discern between good and evil. That's what the Hebrew contains here. And so it's a very simple prayer. But the concrete nature of the wording is interesting. It's quaint, and much Hebrew is quaint. We have to make it more elegant in modern translation, but in the original it's always muscular, concrete. And therefore, when one prays for understanding, one prays for something specific, organic, physical, a listening heart. The heart is an organ where much happens in the mind of the Jew. But this notion of the listening heart is something that we can take with us. We need to have a heart that listens. Indeed, a whole book has been written on this verse by Sister Joan of Arc, a French Dominican, Sœur Jeanne d'Arc. The title is Donne-moi un cœur qui écoute. Give me a heart that listens. And she emphasizes the importance of knowing what the Hebrew actually says. And she over a whole volume, opens up the meaning of this expression, a heart that listens. Do we have a heart that listens? A heart that listens feels. A heart that listens somehow intuits, enters in and picks up. If the heart is coarse, hardened, it will not pick up. And one of the ways in which it will be disabled will be the fact that the mouth will be too much at work. It is in inverse proportion to the work of the tongue that the heart is truly able to listen. The meditation of that long psalm, the acrostic psalm, the psalm on the law of God, in various sections, each beginning with a letter of the Hebrew alphabet and with each verse beginning with that letter, is one in which the law is referred to under different names, but in which the law is enthroned. For us too, the will of God must be enthroned, and in our worship, the will of God must be sought, e.g. in the rubrics. We cannot presume to worship in spirit and in truth and disobey the will of God expressed by the law of God. The law of God is concrete. It's the will of God expressed in the instructions of the Church. And we need to know what those instructions are. There are, over our country, on a regular basis, unfortunately, in the very heart of the most sacred moments of the liturgy, acts of disobedience going on, often because people don't know what is actually written, but sometimes when the priest does know and does not actually correct. The will of God is clear in the general instruction of the Roman Missal and in the rubrics, and in also the clear indications and corrections given to abuses given by the Vatican. Unfortunately, we think we can do better. Well, God is not free to bless disobedience. So here peace means also peace under God, where the will entwines and weds the divine will. Then alone can we be offering worship in spirit and in truth. For until then, we are not. We are worshipping something else. We are in some way reigning over God. And in any way to use worship as a place where we can get glory is to divert praise from its true goal, deflect it onto ourselves, and that can happen more than we think. We are gratified by being visible. With regard to the reading from the Epistle to the Romans, the Greek does actually say what the old translations translate. It is not ambiguous. It just simply says in verse 28 of chapter 8 of this wonderful epistle, we know that for those who love God, tis akaposin tontheon, panta synerge is agathon, all things now, synerge, work together for good. Now, the grammatical way in which the Greek acts is this: a neuter plural, therefore all things, panta, plural of pan, a neuter plural takes a singular in the verb, and that is what has caused the confusion in translation. But actually the Greek as it stands just says, for those who love God, panta synerge is agathon, all things cooperate unto good. And that's how it was translated by St. Jerome in the Vulgate. And that's how it's come into our spirituality. And therefore, to necessarily say that that's not the correct way is to beg the question. Because although there is some slight variation in manuscripts, this is essentially what has come down to us. And we cannot easily change the order of things. It is true that you can get around it in this way by saying, we know that for those who love God, and then one can add, He works all things together unto good. But that's not what the Greek says. And I remember that in class, in the study of the Greek that we were doing of Romans by a very good lecturer in university, it was pointed out to us the Greek actually says what's there and how it's been translated literally in the past. There's no need to change it. It contains a profound teaching, that of divine providence, in which everything is there, somehow being corrected for our good, being permitted for our good. It's also, by the way, what was given to our English spirituality through Blessed Julian of Norwich. She was taught that directly in her mystical experience there in the reclusory. The Lord gave her to understand in those 16 revelations or showings of divine love how all things were actually cooperating unto good. All things shall be well, and all things shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. So that is something of the divine providence that orders things, and therefore it gives us peace when things apparently are going wrong, because actually God is allowing something to happen, and there is something there that He wants for my good. It's important, otherwise we rebel against the event and the will of God calmly coming to us for our good. We don't collide with an event, we wed the will of God in the event. It gives peace in affronting the pain of life, because much pain comes from interior rebellion. Peace, again, rather than warfare. And in the Gospel we have this pearl of great price. And we also have the person who is able to pull from his treasury things both good and old. We also know how, in fact, the wise man is not a person of absolutes, but of both and. Hence it is that those who are into absolutes are as yet incomplete. One needs to be as open as the Holy Spirit, and as calm as the unchanging Godhead, who is not affected by the last whim. Have you understood all this? They said. Yes. And he said to them, Well then, every scribe who becomes a disciple of the kingdom of heaven is like a householder who brings out from his storeroom things both new and old. Julian. Lines written to Julian of Norwich. O child of bygone pain, O little noise, once heard without a word upon the page that holds thee still, where stilled in gentle poise are thoughts that flutter yet 'tween age and age. O happy child, O child, all wild with God, that brought thee home, nay, kept thee homeward bound, within a home all his. Thy feet have trod a land that I have known and wholly found. O sister, elder sister, where thou art, hard by the ear of all, recall that here the morsels of a doubly broken heart would find a place to love, a place as near to this world's end as did thy loving hide. For none that knew this once can else abide.
O Jesu dulcis, O Jesu pie, O Jesu finis